So hello everyone. Yesterday we discussed the topics of relevant costing, and we were discussing risk and uncertainty topic. So is there any question regarding this topic or not? Any question? So I think because there is no question, Abisha has asked me a brief discussion on minimax regret. I will be starting from the minimax regret. This will be my first point, because we last time, that is yesterday, we discussed maximax. We just have a brief definition of minimax regret, but today we will be calculating the regret first of all, and then we will reach the decision based on minimax. So there will be a discussion on that. So I don't see any further question right now, so I think it will be safe for me to assume that there isn't any. So let's start with that. So first of all, we have three risk-based decisions. One is maximin, the other one is maximax, and the final one is minimax. So the decision for the minimax is minimize the maximum opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is also known as regret. That means in the decision table, first of all, we have to calculate the regret. We have to calculate the regret. Then we will be choosing the maximum value among the options. And then from the options, I will identify the minimum value. So let's see first of all how to calculate regret. Okay. So this was the example that we were discussing yesterday. And now we will be calculating regret first of all. So to calculate regret, let's choose a color. So I'm choosing, I want a color which is vibrant to you people. So I'm choosing brown color, say. So to calculate regret, the first thing you should do is, first of all, from the possibilities, here are the possibilities. Demand of 120 is the possibility. So from the possibilities, I will choose the highest value. I will choose the highest value. So the highest value in the possibility of 120 is 468. 468. And the highest value in the possibility of demand 190 is 816. So this will be my first task. Now what I do, I will subtract each value turn by turn from the highest profit that I have chosen. So for small van, it will be 468 minus 300. So it's 168. It's 168. So this 168 will be regret. Let me put a line between these two so that you can clearly distinguish the two values. So this 168 will be regret. I will write it down. Regret. Okay. Similarly, we can calculate the regret for medium van at the demand of 120. It will be equal 468 minus 468. So it will be 0. It will be 0. Finally, the regret for large van is 468 minus 368. So it will be 100. Similarly, we can calculate for demand 190. It will be 816 minus 300. So it is 516. It is 816 minus 500. So it's 316. And this will be 0. So the figures that I have calculated in the brown color is actually the regret. These are the regrets. Now, to calculate the values based on minimax, which is minimize the maximum regret, what first we have to do is we have to choose the maximum regret value in each option. So the maximum value for small van is 516. It is 516. The maximum value for medium van is 316. And for large van it is 100. Alright. Now among these, I will choose or make a decision based on the minimum regret, and that will be 100. That means, as far as minimax is concerned, minimax decision is concerned, we will be buying the large van based on minimax decision. Okay? So this is just an example to solve. We had already discussed how to calculate maximax, maximin, minimax and expected value from the example of our own. So I'm moving ahead. And my next topic is value of information. So what is the value of information? It is that how much valuable the information is that is available to me. That is available to me. Abish has asked me, sir, which manager should choose the regret rule? Dear, it will be risk neutral. Risk neutral. So the perfect information is the guaranteed to predict the future with 100% accuracy. So if someone will come up with the 100% accurate information about the future, such information will be the perfect information. Then there is an imperfect information. And this is the information which it has or which cannot be predicted with 100% certainty. So we are not sure whether this information is correct or it can be incorrect. So such information is known as imperfect information. Now, value of perfect information. So the value of perfect information is the difference between expected value of profit of perfect information and the expected value of profit of imperfect information. So that means we have to calculate the expected value of profit of perfect information first. Okay? Then we also require to calculate the expected value of profit of imperfect information. Once we calculate these two expected value calculations, we will take the difference. So let's discuss the value of perfect information in this case. So for that, what you have to do is, first of all, as you have choose the highest profit against each demand, what you will be doing is that you will calculate its expected value. You will calculate its expected value. So it will be 468 multiplied by the probability of 0.4. So it is 187.2. Similarly, for demand of 190, it will be 816 multiplied by 0.6. So it will be 489.6. So the value will be, the expected value will be 676.8. This 676.8 will be known as, this is expected value of perfect information. Okay? Which I said 468 into 0.4 is 194.4. Let me check my calculation. Abhi, please redo the calculation because it's 187.2. It's 187.2. Please redo the calculation. Okay? Your calculation is incorrect. So this is the expected value of perfect information. Now we also require the expected value of imperfect information. So all these expected values that we had calculated was the expected value when the information was not perfect. So this is the expected value of imperfect information. And out of these, the highest expected value was large band. That means the value of the expected value of imperfect information will be 636.8. Now, the value of perfect information will be, it will be the expected value of perfect information minus the expected value with imperfect information. So in this example, it is $40. Okay? It is $40. So these are the steps that I had performed. You can see that. How 636? Yesterday we did calculate the expected value of large van, and it was 636.8. So this is the part of calculation that I did yesterday. How do you know that it is perfect information? Dear, it is $40 is not the perfect information, it is the value of the perfect information. The point is that if I be able to know with 100% certainty that my demand will be 120, if I know with 100% certainty that my demand will be 120, then I would have buy medium one and my profit will be 468. And if I knew with 100% certainty that the demand will be 190, then I would have chosen the large one with the profit of 816. So these will be my profits if I know the information is 100% accurate, the perfect information. And what I have done over here is I had calculated its expected value. Okay? So we have already done that. The example. Let's move on to the other topic, and that is the decision tree. So what happens sometimes is that in the calculation of expected value, there are possibilities and then there are further possibilities to that. So there are multiple types of different possibilities, different types of probabilities. Or even sometimes there is a decision within a decision tree. So such situations will be complex, especially to portray on the tabular form. So to make it simple, the other option is to construct a decision tree. So first of all, it is important to note that in the decision tree, there will be two different types of notations, I could say. One is circle and the other one is square box. So whenever there is a possible outcome, start of that possible outcome, I will use circle. And to start off a decision point, I will use square. So I will portray the complex situation to perform a decision tree. It is important to note that we will construct the decision tree from left to right. But when it comes to solving the decision tree, it will be from right to left. It is important to note that the construction of decision tree, I'm actually talking about this. The construction of decision tree is not required in session CBE. So you will be provided with that decision tree. So let's see the example. Please read the example. This is an example of decision tree. Please read the example. So hopefully you have read the information. So in the information you can see that there are two different types of possibilities. One is about the demand. So there could be high demand, there could be medium demand, and there could be low demand. So this is one type of possibility. The other type of possibility is whether the repair will complete in time or not. So you can see there are two different types of possibilities. Now in such situations, we have to prepare a decision tree, and the decision tree will look like this. Because we don't need to prepare that, it will be provided in the exam. Now what we can do is we will solve it from right to left. So if I could number that, this will be my first to calculate, this will be my second to calculate, third I will be calculating this part, and in fourth I will be making a decision. Now wherever there is a circle, we will calculate the expected value. The expected value. And wherever there is a square, we will be making a decision. Okay? So this is how you perform your decision tree. Let's talk to the other topic, and that is the sensitivity analysis. So sensitivity analysis is a technique to assess the risk. So it is a risk assessment technique. And it calculates the maximum percentage of change in a variable before the decision would change. Before the decision would change. The key formula for this, for the calculation purpose, is profit divided by area of sensitivity multiplied by 100%. So this is an example of sensitivity. So for example, if I have to know the sensitivity of a selling price, it will be profit, which is 20,000, divided by sales, which is 100,000, multiplied by 100%. So it should be 20%. Similarly, we can calculate for material cost, labor cost, fixed overhead, sales volume, etc. So this is all about the risk topic. Now we will be moving to discuss my other topic, and that is, let me open. So now we will be moving to the next section, which is budgeting and control. The budgeting and control topic, there are two key topics in that. First of all is budgeting, and the other topic is standard costing. Now, especially the standard costing topic is likely to appear in section C type questions. So we will be discussing section C type questions regarding variance analysis especially. And this will be the task for the day. So I am just having a 2 to 3 minutes break, because this is the start of the new topic, as I do in every point. But by that time, you can ask questions. I will be taking your questions. Okay. So now, as there were no questions during the break, let's continue to discuss the budgeting topic. So what is a budget? So a budget is a financial and or quantitative plan of operations for a forthcoming period. So the important points to remember over here that it should be financial and or quantitative. It should be a plan and should also be for a future period, the forthcoming period. The cycle of planning and control will be, so first of all, what we do, we determine the objectives. We set our objectives, we set targets. Then we plan. So this is where we prepare budgets. Then we implement. So we operate in line with the objectives, in line with the budget. And finally, we compare. So this is the cycle that continuously revolve around. We set objectives, we plan it, we implement it, and then we compare. And after that, we set another objective for our new period. So this is the whole cycle of planning and control. Now, what is the purpose of budgeting? The first purpose is that it helps us to forecast. It also helps us or the management in planning. It also helps in controlling cost. Budget is a good way for communication and coordination. And budget are also used to evaluate the performance, to assess whether the business or the division has performed well or not. And budget is also used to motivate. Although there is a discussion on that will come up in near future. Communication. Abish has asked me the question about communication. Dear, communication means that budget will help to communicate different tasks to different departments. So, for example, a complete sales budget will let production manager know that how much sales will be required in the specific month. So budget is a way to communicate that how much the production manager should be producing in a specific month. It is a way to communicate. Okay? Now, let's discuss the aspect of control. So there are two kinds of control. First is the feedback control, and the other one is feed-forward control. Feedback control are the control actions. These are the control actions which are taken after the variance is reported. So that means the budgeted period has already been gone. Whereas feed-forward control is taking control actions before the period ends. So the period has yet to be ended. So this is how we can illustrate it on the diagram. Okay, Abish has requested me to give the example. So let's suppose we have produced a sales budget of say 1,000 units in the month of March. Now, after setting the budget, I will be performing. So in actual, I have been able to sell 990 units. That means when I will get to know that my actual figure were, that will be at the end of March. So that means this will now be the end of March. And at the end of March, I will find that I have sold 10 units less. So I will take control actions on that. But you see that this budget period is of March and March has already been end. So any control action that now I will be going to take is the feedback control. Now let's suppose in the example that we have set the budget of 1,000 units. But now today is 15th of March. It's not the end of March, it is the 15th of March. Now, on 15th of March, you have seen that the actual sales are 490 units. You at that date forecast that you will not be able to meet the budget by the end of March. So that means you took actions on 15 March. Now these control actions will be known as feed forward control. Okay? Let's now also discuss the behavior aspect of budgeting. So there are a few general considerations. First of all, budget pressure unites employees against management. So it is common in the organizations where a proper budgeting system has been implemented that the employees who feel victimized in the process of budgeting will be united and they support each other against management. Pressure may lead to negative results. So sometimes there is so much pressure of budget that the results may become negative. Then the workers form into protective groups. So they make up their groups so that they can protect each other. Accounting personnel equate success with finding faults in workers. So what happened at that point is that the accounting personnel is happy to finding the faults. They think that their job in the budgeting process is to finding faults. And with that, worker feels victimized. And due to that, they have a loss of confidence and motivation. And finally, supervisor uses budget as an expression of their position of superiority. So all of these six are actually the negative effects of implementing the budget. These are the negative effects of completing the budget. Now, what is the relationship between the motivation and budget setting? It is important to note that we will find the best performance when a budget is perceived as challenging but achievable. If the budget does not challenge me, it will not motivate me. Neither if the budget seems to me is so much high that I will not be able to achieve that. In both of these situations, my motivation level will be down. I will not try to achieve the budget. So the target should be set at almost achievable level for maximum motivation and performance. Now, it is also vital that the goals of management are in line with the goals of the organization as a whole. And if this happens, this is known as goal congruence. This is known as goal congruence. Okay? So, as a management accounting, we should ensure that we should set a budget in a way that there will be a goal congruence. We do not set certain objectives which are in conflict with the organization. Now, the participation effect in budgeting. So we have two approaches to prepare the budget. One is a top-down approach and the other one is a bottom-up approach. In the top-down approach, budgets are imposed, whereas in the bottom-up approach, budget holder invites its employees, its people, and have their input, and then finally setting the budget. Bilal Hassan has asked me, sir, is this a section B or section C question? Dear, this is such a question that it can come up in both. It can come up in both. But the good news about this topic, especially the budgeting area, is that whatever you will be examined, it is likely that it will be from your book knowledge. So it will be most of the time the reproduction of what it is written in your textbooks, most of the times. Okay? But this can come up in section B as well as in section C. So there are few advantages of top-down, and there are also few advantages of bottom-up as well. So the first advantage of top-down approach is that setting the budget with that method will be quicker. It also avoids budgetary slack and budgetary biasness. So there won't be any biasness while preparing the budget. And in such way, there are chances that your resources will be utilized more efficiently and effectively. This is because senior management is more aware about the resource availability, and they are more clear about the objectives as well. But there are few advantages of bottom-up as well, which by the way should be disadvantage of top-down. So what are the advantages of bottom-up? It is that more detailed information will be used in setting the budget. And with that, what will happen? It is most realistic budget. So generally, morale and motivation is improved, and due to that, increased likelihood of achievement will also be better. Now, let's discuss the incremental approach of budgeting. So in the incremental approach, we had a few data on the current year's budget. What we do, we adjust our previous budget by adding something or subtracting some resources, whichever is given, and then we prepare the new budget, and such budget is known as incremental approach of budgeting. So there are few advantages and disadvantages which are very easy. So please read these advantages and disadvantages. You can ask the question regarding the advantages and disadvantages of incremental budgeting. As I told you that this topic is more about the bookish knowledge. Business scrutiny means that the detailed analysis of business activities. So in incremental budget, because we simply take the preceding budget and then built up the budget based on that, so we do not actually detail review our current business activities and how business should be done. The budgetary slack is making a spare portion of the budget. So for example, if I can buy a component at suppose $10 per unit. So just for a safe side, what we can try to do is that we set a budget of $11 per unit. So what I have done is I have overestimated the cost. With that, what will happen is that even if I buy the component poorly, even then I would have sourced it at suppose $10.8. But then, even then my performance seems to be good, seems to be okay. Although I have performed poorly. The business scrutiny means the detailed analysis of the business activities, that how our products are manufacturing, how our customers are buying our goods, what are their demands, how labor is working. We do not do that if we have to prepare the budget of using incremental. Dear business slack, in simple terms, slack means overestimation of cost. It is the overestimation of cost, or even underestimation of revenues. Okay? So now let's discuss the fixed and flexible budget. A fixed budget is one that is not adjusted regardless of the level of activity attained in a period. Whereas a flexible budget is a budget which is designed to change as volume of activity changes. So what are the purpose of flexible budget? There are few. First of all, to design to cope different activity level to keep budget meaningful and hence preserve the relevance of variance for effective control. Because for what happened over here is that if we have prepared a budget of 10,000 units and suppose the material cost is $20,000 in the budget, in actual material cost could be suppose $25,000. But we have produced 15,000 units. So the comparison of material budget and actual is not meaningful because both of these informations are not comparable. So to make it comparable, what we do, we prepare a revised budget on 15,000. And the budget that is prepared on the 15,000 will be the flexible budget. It is also useful in the planning stage to show different results from possible activity levels. And it is also necessary as a control device because we can now have a meaningful comparison with the flexible budget. So let's see the example. Let's see the example. In fact, let me correct the example a bit. There's some issue on the formatting. Let me correct that. So this is it. So please read the example and I will be discussing it. So I hope you have read the information by now. Let's prepare the flexible budget at 12,350. This activity level of 12,350. Okay. So what we do, we will prepare the budget using the behaviors. Now, first of all, we will identify the behavior of each cost. So first of all, let's see the simple one, which is the overheads. So we can clearly see as the activity level changes, there is no change in total cost of fixed overheads. So this is fixed. This is a fixed cost. Now to estimate the other, what we do, we will calculate the cost per unit. So if we calculate the material cost per unit, it will be $3. And this is same in all of the three different activity levels. Now because the cost per unit is same, so that means it is a variable cost. And finally, there is a labor cost. So if we calculate it, it will be 2.7 for 10,000 units. It will be how much for 12,000 units? Can anybody calculate it me? Abid, can you please calculate it me? For 12,000 units, what will be the labor cost? 2.588, thank you. 2.59. And what about at the activity level of 14,000? It's 2.5. So thank you very much. It's 2.5. Now, as we can clearly see that this cost is decreasing, and basically it is not constant. Neither it is constant in total nor it is in per unit. This will hint me that this will be semi-variable. Now for semi-variable, I will be using the high-low method to identify the fixed and variable cost. So this will be, highest activity level will be 14,000 and lowest activity will be 10,000. So the difference will be 4,000. Its cost will also be 35,000 and 27,000. If I subtract it, the answer will be 8,000. That means the variable cost per unit will be 2 per unit. Now I will calculate the fixed cost by putting the value of $2 in any of the units. So my fixed cost will be 27,000 minus 2 into 10,000. So this will be 7,000. Now I will estimate the cost on 12,350 units. So for material, it will be 12,350 into 3. For labor, it will be 7,000 the fixed cost plus the variable cost per unit, which is 2 per unit multiplied by 12,350. And finally, the overheads, this will remain same, that will be 20,000. So I will calculate it and I will have a flexible budget. Okay? Have you understood that? Now let's talk about the zero-based budget. Now zero-based budget is the basic premise in the zero-based budget is that we will be preparing the budget from the start. Okay, one of the students has asked me to go back. So I'm going back to my previous slide for him or her. Okay, here it is. So today I will be having a cup of tea. I hope you people don't mind that. Elizabeth has asked me that what will be the variance then. So Elizabeth, if you can calculate the material cost, the total labor cost and overhead cost for me, what will be the total answer? Can you please calculate it for me? It's 88,750 in total, I believe. 88,750. Okay? So this is my total cost using the flexible budget. My actual total cost is 90,000. That means what will be the difference? The difference, I believe, is 1,250. Yes. So a couple of people are still active. It's good to see that. So this will be the adverse variance because in actual I have spent more than the budget. Okay. So anything else on that? Now moving on. The zero-based budgeting. So it is the process and the basic premise of such budget is that every year we will prepare the budget from the scratch. So it is a completely 360-degree reverse approach of what we had covered in the incremental budgeting. Okay? In such budgets, each cost or revenue or activity must be justified in its entirety. Mohammad Shahzad Akhtar has asked me, how calculate flex budget for labor cost? Dear, as labor cost was semi-variable, or you will calculate the labor cost as you calculate or estimate the cost earlier in F2 in case of semi-variable cost. So this method should be same, okay? Now it is important to note that ZBB is not particularly useful for direct manufacturing. This is because there is not much change between what we had done last year and what we are going to do this year. So even in such situations, incremental budget will perform its purpose. But ZBB, the zero-based budget, is particularly useful in public sector organizations. There are a few steps to perform the zero-based budget, and number one is define decision units, evaluate and rank packages, and then we allocate resources. Farah Ibrahim has asked me, can you give an example how these steps are applied in a scenario? Dear, generally, whenever such question has appeared in the exam, he has simply asked us to explain these steps. So there is no such scenario related question. Okay? Now, because this is a revision session, so I'm not wasting my time resources in discussing these. Abish has asked me, is there any calculation of zero-based budget in the exam? Dear, these are the name of the approaches. So if you are preparing a zero-based budget or incremental budget, the formula to calculate the budgeted sales revenue will be same, and that will be units multiplied by price. It is just a way that how did you identify that in the budget you will be preparing 1000 units or you will be selling 1000 units. How did you reach that? If you have just picked the preceding year value, added something into that and said now I will be going to sell 1000 units budget, then it means the unit that I have identified is using the incremental approach. But if this time around I have reassessed my market conditions and then set the budget, then this 1000 units will be from the approach of zero-based budgeting. Okay? Now there are a few advantages and disadvantages for that. The budgeting topic is very much on the book knowledge. So please now read the advantages and disadvantages and ask me which you didn't understand. Okay? we have two questions from the students. One is to explain the advantage of the number one. So this was that the value-based budget can identify and remove inefficient or obsolete operations. So what happened over here is that suppose in 2009 we had prepared a budget, and at that time we have included an activity which was very important, an important activity. Now in 2010, maybe this activity is no longer required. But if we have been using the incremental budget, we would have included it in 2010 as well. For example, in 2009, we launch a new product. So in 2009, we have to perform activities related to marketing that help the intended customer for awareness. Now, this activity is pretty much relevant for 2009, but in 2010, there is no need for further awareness. The marketing strategies should be different from what we have decided in 2009. Now, in case of incremental budgeting, in 2010, we will be doing same kinds of marketing which are for awareness, although we don't need that. But if we are preparing using zero-based budget, then we will look for 2010. Each cost has to be justified, and in such a way, we will be able to identify that this activity, the awareness marketing activity, should no longer be required in 2010. So we will not waste resources on that. Okay? Similarly, because we are doing a detailed research on preparing the budget, so this will help me in close examining the organization operations. This is what we call business scrutiny. Okay? No, it isn't. In A, we are saying that any inefficient resources can now be avoided. In B, for that we are actually examining our business operations in detail. So we will have, or we will take more insight into our business, that where our business is going, what are the demands of the customers, etc. Now let's also discuss the rolling budget. The problem in the periodic budget is that we have a budget of 12 months, suppose, that is from January to December. Now, when we are preparing the budget, for the first few months, we can make our forecast, we can make our plan, we can have my estimates with some certainty. But in the later months, my budget will be uncertain. That means it will be unrealistic. My budget will become more unrealistic. So this is the first challenge that I find in the periodic budget. The other challenge is that suppose if I prepare a budget of 2018, and that will be from January 2018 to December 2018. So I have a clear plan of full 1 year. But as the period progresses, as the period prolongs, as the period goes, my planning will shorten. So for example, if 3 months are passed in 2018, I will now have left with the plan of only of 9 months. So these are the two bigger challenges that we face in the periodic budget. The solution of this is in the rolling budget. So for example, the first budget that we have prepared is from January 2018 to December 2018. And now suppose we are preparing a 2-month rolling budget. So what we do, that after every 2 months, we re-prepare our budget, and our next budget will be from March 2018 to February 2019. Similarly, the third budget will be May 18 to April 2019. And this is how it goes on. So in that, after every 2 months, I will have a complete 12 months plan once again. Okay? Now, once again, there are a few advantages and disadvantages on that. So if you can read the advantages and disadvantages and then ask me which you didn't understand. Atiba Aslam has asked that are we going to do a question on incremental budget as it has came in a previous attempt? Dear, it doesn't matter. Incremental budget, zero-based budget, these are all the kind of approaches. The calculation aspect in any approach will be same. So whether it is an incremental budget, whether it is a zero-based budget, it will not change. That means, for example, the budgeted sales revenue formula will be number of units of sales volume multiplied by the expected selling price. Now, whether this data arise from zero-based approach or from incremental approach, it doesn't matter. So the calculation aspect will not change, whether it is an incremental or it is a zero-based. Okay? So you don't need to worry about that. This is the problem that even sometimes my students face, that they are confused that, oh no, there is zero-based budgeting question that has appeared in the exam. Now, how do we going to prepare the zero-based budget? To prepare the preparation of budgets aspect will remain the same. The performer will remain the same. So it will not change. Okay? So don't worry about that. There is one more question. So how can it demotivate managers? Dear, it demotivate managers because You see, in rolling budget, we are preparing the budget after every 2 months. After every 2 months, we are preparing the budget. So that means the manager are reperforming the same task again and again. And performing the retask will generally demotivate them. Okay? There is one more question from Abid Shah. Sir, for rolling budget, as per period ends for next period, we will prepare the budget from start or from previous budget data. Dear, to be honest, we do not prepare it from start because it will be a very hectic, very difficult task. So suppose, first of all, we had prepared the budget of January 2018 to this December 2018, right? But suppose, in the example, the 2-month rolling budget means that I have to re-prepare the budget from March 2018 to February 2019. Now, with that, I already had prepared the budget of April, May, June, etc. So I don't need to re-prepare it from the start, but there should be some relevant changes. There should be some change in circumstances that now I came to know. So I have the opportunity to at least adjust this budget to make it more realistic. Okay? Now let's discuss the topic of beyond budgeting. And I don't know, this is the one of the least tested topic in F5, and I really don't know the reason about that. But to me, this is the favorite topic of mine. This is my favorite. That is the beyond budgeting. Beyond budgeting is basically an approach which says that we should go ahead, we should move ahead about the budgeting. So we should not stick with the budgeting process, we should go ahead on that. We should look beyond what we do in the budgeting. Abisha has asked me, is it the new topic in F5? No, it is not. It's not the new topic in F5. But yes, this is the topic which is not tested so much frequently. So this Muhammad Shara Akhtar has said it means in rolling budget forward control approach is used. Yes, we can say that. A kind of. Yes, you are correct. Muhammad Bilal is saying that is this important for this attempt? Dear, if you had taken my class yesterday, then I told you that the examiner is not the friend of mine, so I don't know about that. It is important to note that your exams are now CBEs, and in CBEs, every student has different exam. So, at least how can I tell whether such topic will appear to your exam or not? Okay? So now, beyond budgeting. So traditional budgeting has been much criticized in recent years. So this topic, this approach actually criticizes the budgetary systems. And what are the criticisms? These are the few criticisms. So first of all, it says that the budgets are time consuming. They took too much time. Also, the focus when we prepare the budget is majority internal, so there is an insufficient external focus. They are often prepared as a result of internal bargain. So sales director is saying that the sales budget should be 1000 units, and sales manager is saying that no, it should be 900 units. So they bargain with each other and they came to a conclusion that the sales budget should be 950 units. So it's not actually the planning part that we are preparing the budget. It is just a bargaining between the two divisions, the two departments. They are also too rigid and prevent fast response. It also protect rather than reduce cost. It will not allow us to innovate. And finally, it fails to focus on shareholders' value. It fails to focus on shareholders' value. So these are the few practical limitations, practical criticisms of preparing the budget. And beyond budgeting approach says that due to such criticisms, we should forget about preparing the budgets in the organization. So this budgetary system is a disaster for the company. We should avoid that. But then the question is that if we don't prepare budget, what should we do? How are we going to plan that? How are we going to do our activities? It says two key concepts. First is the adaptive management processes. So it says, instead of making a rigid plan, just let's see the environment, that how the environment is, how are the demands of the customers, what are the demands of the suppliers, how everything is going, and then adopt accordingly. And the other factor is the decentralized management. And this involves empowering the managers to make their own decisions. So there shouldn't be any budget, any plan which will guide the managers that they have to perform their work according to the budget. This shouldn't be the case. They said, just empower the managers. Managers will decide what to take a decision in some certain circumstances. So this will speed up their response time. Okay? So this is what beyond budgeting says. Now let's come to some numerical aspect of budgeting. And there's only one numerical aspect, quantitative aspect, the calculative aspect in the budgeting that I will discuss over here will be the learning curve. Okay? So what is the theory of learning curve? It says, when new working practices or products are introduced, the theory is that as a workforce gains experience in a task, it will come to perform that task quicker. So for example, if I produce a unit, for example, a cup, for the very first time, it will take more time than if I produce it second, third, or fourth time. Because with the time passes, I will be more experienced in making the cup and thus will produce my cup, my product, more quicker than before. So this is what actually theory is. Now there are a few assumptions for that. And the assumptions are, first of all, there should be a significant manual element. The task must be repeated. Production must be at an early stage. There must be consistency in the workforce. There must not be extensive break in production or workers will forget their skills. And finally, workforce is motivated because they will only learn when they are motivated. If they are demotivated, they won't learn that and they will not save their time or they cannot produce the next unit quicker than the earlier one. Okay? So there are terms. One is the learning rate, and the learning rate is the rate at which the learning curve occurs. Then there is a cumulative average time, and this is the average time for all units produced so far. Produced so far. Okay? So that means that the cumulative average time is the average time on specific number of units. That will also mean for every total unit, the cumulative average time could be different. Now, the rule is as cumulative output doubles. As output doubles. The cumulative average time per unit fall to a given percentage. Will fall to a given percentage. So let's discuss this with an example. A firm workforce experience a 80% learning rate. The budgeted time for the first batch is 100 hours. So let's calculate the total time for the next units. So for this, let me open the OneNote document. Now, if these will be my units, this will be total time. Now, if first unit is produced for 100 hours, then it means the total time will be 100. And what will be the cumulative average time? Or we can call it the average time. It will also be 100. Because if we divide the total time with the number of units, the answer will be 100. Now, the rule is when cumulative output doubles, so the double of 1 will be 2. This average time will fall to a given percentage, which is 80% in this example. So this should be 80. This means the total time to produce the 2 units will be 160. 160. Okay? Similarly, once again, when output again doubles, so the double of 2 is 4. This will further reduce to 80%. So this will be 64. This will be 64. So what will be the total time for the 4 units? It will be 64 multiplied by 4. Let me open my calculator. So it will be 64 into 4. It will be 256. Yes, Sarah, it is 256. Thank you, Mehdi. Yes, sir. It is 256. Then once again, if the cumulative output double once again, so the double of 4 will be 8. It will then further reduce to 80%, and that will be, if I can calculate it, it will be 64 into 80%, it will be 51.2. Sorry, 64 into 80%, it will be 51.2. That means for the total of 8 units will be produced at 409.6. Yes, Atiba Matheson, you are correct. Now we can also, from this information, we can also tell that my second unit should have been produced in 60 hours. This is because for 2 units, we have consumed total 160 hours, but out of these 2, the first unit took 100 hours. That means the second unit would have considered 60 hours. Now we can perform the same calculation with the learning curve formula as well. And remember, this is an exam formula. So it will be provided to you in the exam. Okay? Now, what help do we get from this formula? So first of all, we can directly calculate the cumulative average time of 8 units from that formula. So this is the one benefit. The other benefit is that from that formula, we can calculate on any units. As you can see in the tabular form, if someone asks me that what would be the cumulative average time of 6 units, then this tabular approach will not tell us. Okay? This will not tell us. But we can calculate the average time for 6 units with this formula. Now, one of the students has asked me that how do we perform this formula in the exam or in the spreadsheet, by the way. So first of all, let's listen to the good news. And the good news is that in the exam, we don't need to calculate the value of P. That is log R divided by log 2. We don't need to calculate that because it is provided in the exam. Okay? So we can simply calculate or formulate in the spreadsheet by AX raised to power B. So if I can express this formula in the Excel form, so it will be equal A into X raised to power B. So this will be the Excel based formula, I can say. Steric represents multiply and the cap represents the power sign. Okay? Now the suggestion of learning curve. Irfanul Hassani asked me, log result would also be provided in paper based. Yes, it will be provided in paper based. So don't worry about that. This is the same. On the other hand, the can cumulative average dropped at 0? No, it will not. It will never drop at 0%. Okay? And what is the reason? This is what actually we are discussing right now. The cessation of learning curve. So eventually the time per unit will reach a steady state where no further improvement can be made. Where no further improvement can be made. There are few practical reasons for that. So one is when the machine efficiency restrict any further improvement. So there is the restriction from the machine itself. And then when the workforce reach their physical limits. So once the steady state is reached, the labor hour will not reduced any further. It will not reduce any further. And hence, the time taken by the last unit before the cessation will continue for further. So for example, if the learning effect ceases on 20th unit, then from the 21st unit onward, the time taken to produce the 20th unit will continue. That means the 23rd unit will take the time which we had consumed to produce the 20th unit because there is no further improvement right now. Okay? Now let's discuss this example. And I will be doing this example on the spreadsheet, by the way. So please read this example. So I hope you have read the information. I have written the value of B because this will generally be provided to you in the exam. You can calculate it by log of 85% divided by log 2, by the way, on your calculator as well. It's minus 0.23446. Let me calculate it again. Log 85% divided by log 2. Yes, you are correct. Thank you, Abed. You are correct. It is minus 0.234465. Minus 0.234465. I must have written any wrong value. Okay? So this will be the value that will be provided in the exam. So the first question is that how long will it take to produce the first 15 batches? Now remember that to calculate the total labor hours, what you should do is first calculate the average time and then total time. Okay? So let me open the Excel sheet. So first of all, I will be estimating the average time for 15 batches. So the calculation will be equal A. Now the first batch took 200 hours. So the value of A will be 200 into X. X will be the number of units, which is 15 raised to power the value of B. So the value of B will be minus 0.234465. So minus 0.234465. So the average time for the 15 batches is 105.993. Now let's calculate the total time. For total time, what we will be doing is we will be multiplying the average time with the number of units, which was 15. So the total time will be 1589.9. Have you understood that? Now, let's see the other requirement. This says, what time per batch should be budgeted from 31st batch? So it is important to note that in this example, the learning curve will cease at the 30th batch. At the 30th batch. So from the 31st batch, my time per unit will be same as of 30th batch. So that means actually I have to calculate the time for the 30th batch. Now to calculate its time for a specific batch, what I should do is I require a total time for 30 batches. And then I require a total time for one less unit, that is 29 batches. And then the difference will be the time for the 30th batch. One of the student has asked me to repeat the calculation of average time, so here it is. Okay. Now to calculate the total time for 30 batches, first of all, we will calculate the average time and then total time. Now the formula for average time will once again be the same one, which is equal to 100 into 30 raised to power minus 0.234465. 234465. So it will be 90.0942. So if I multiply it with the number of units, which is 30, because this is the average time for 30 units, so I have for total time it should be for 30 units. So it will be 2702.83. Similarly, we can calculate it for 29 units. So what I have done is I have copied and pasted it, and I will add its value. So instead of 30, this will be 29, and this will also be 29 instead of 30. Now, the time for the 30th batch will be the total time for 30 batches minus the total time for 29 batches. So the 30th batch will took 69.2435 hours. Yes, Abid, it is correct, 69.24 hours. So with this example, you have learned how to calculate the time for a specific unit. Now let's see the last requirement, and in which it has said how long will it take to produce the 45 batches. Now to calculate the total time for 45 batches, we have to divide the units between the two. First, the units within learning curve and the units beyond learning curve. Now, learning curve stops at 30 units, so that means the first 30 units will be in the learning curve, and the additional 15 units will be beyond the learning curve units. Okay? Iram has asked me, what if we calculate the time for the 15th batch and then multiply the value with 30th unit? No, this will be incorrect. It is important to note that the average time that we had calculated is the cumulative average time. And cumulative average time means that the average time can only be applied on 15 batches, neither on 14 nor even on 16. That means to calculate the total of time for 30 batches, we should have an average time of 30 units, 30 batch. Okay? So both of these units will be same. Okay. Now, the units within the learning curve, its total time should be calculated in a way that we calculate the total time earlier. So as we had already calculated it, so the total time for the 30 units will be 2702.83. But for those which are beyond the learning curve, its formula will be number of units multiplied by the time to produce the 30th unit. Because from 31st unit onward, this will be the time per unit. So this calculation will be equal 15 multiplied by 69.24, and the answer is 1038.65. That means the total time will be 3741.48. So yes, Abid, you are correct. So any questions on that? Mustafa Shabir has asked me, can you repeat the calculation? The 15. Here it is. What about Omar Yasin has asked me, what about multiplying by 45 with the difference? Here, if you multiply 45 units with the difference, this will be the total labor hour for the units between, or we can say units after 15 units. After 30 units rather. So that means this will be the time between, if I use my calculator, so this will be the time taken between the units of 30 units and 75 units. This will not include the first 30 units. So you have to break your calculation between the two. Okay, so please explain 15 units calculation which are after 30 units. Okay. This calculation. So dear, what we have 45 units. 30 units, they have the learning curve. That means the additional 15 units do not have the learning curve. And that unit will take the same time each unit, which is the 30th one. And that is 69.24. So the units beyond the learning curve should always be calculated as number of units multiplied by the time to produce the last unit before cessation. Now the last unit before cessation was the 30th unit, and we had calculated its time, which was 69.2435. So the total 15 units will take 15 multiplied by 69.2435. So this is about budgeting. Let's have a couple of minutes break once again, and then when we come back, we will discuss the other topic of variance analysis. Now let's discuss the topic of standard costing and variance analysis. So what is a standard cost? A standard cost is prepared by management in advance and details their expectation of their future. So a standard cost is an estimate. It is an estimate unit cost. It is an estimate unit cost. So this is a standard cost card. And in the standard cost card, this $15 will be known as standard material cost. Within the standard material cost, this 5 kg will be known as standard usage, and the $3 per kg will be standard price. Okay. Similarly, this is standard hours and this is standard rate per hour, and this $18 is the standard labor cost. Now, what are the purpose of standards? Why do we prepare these standards? The first purpose is that we can use it for decision making. Then we can use it for budgeting, the control aspect, and the performance evaluation. This performance evaluation point is very important because in F5, this is the main purpose. This is the main purpose. That means first we will be calculating the variance, then ultimately with that variance we will be assessing the performance of different managers. And there is one more purpose, that sometimes we use it for inventory valuation. We value our inventory, our closing stock based on standards. Okay? Now there are different types of standard. The first one, ideal standard. The second one is attainable. The third one is current standard, and the fourth one is basic standard. The ideal standard is a standard that is set based on perfect operating conditions, perfect working conditions. The attainable standard is a standard that is set based on after making possible improvements. The current standard is a standard which is based on current efficiency level. The current efficiency level. And finally, the basic standard, which is unaltered, not changed over a long period of time. Now the operating statement. So this is how the operating statement looks like. An operating statement is actually the reconciliation between the budgeted profit and the actual profit. And the difference between the budgeted profit and actual profit are the variances. So if there is a favorable variance, it will add to the actual profit. But if there is an adverse variance, this will subtract from the budgeted profit. For this, you should revise the basic variances as well, that is material price, usage, labor rate, idle time. You should revise that. Although these are excluded from F5. Okay? So these are the basic variances. You have these notes, these slides, so you can revise that. I'm not wasting the time on that because these are now no longer be the part of F5. Let's straight away discuss the advanced variance. And the first advanced variance is on material. In material, there are two different types of variances. One is the material price variance and the other one is material usage variance. I'm talking about the basic variances right now. But within this usage variance, we can subdivide into two variances, that is mixed variance and yield variance. So in the advanced variance, the first topic is mix and yield variance of material usage. So how to calculate the mix and yield variance? So for the mix variance, I will prepare this complete format. So please note this complete format first. Please note this. I'm explaining this table with the example. And I will be doing this once again in the spreadsheet, in the Excel. What is mix and yield variance? Dear, I will tell you with the example. Just note this. To calculate the yield variance, I will prepare this table. So please note these headings. So this is the example. Now let's first discuss what actually mixed variance and yield variance means. So please first of all read the example. I will first explain what is meant by mix and yield variance in that, and then I will let you know how to calculate mix and yield variance. Okay, so please read the example. Now I hope you have read the example. So first of all, this is the standard that we have two type of material and the standard usage is 5 kg of onions and 5 kg of tomato. Okay. So this is the standard usage. We have been provided with the actual usage, but this is for 100 batches. That means in actual, per batch consumes 6 kg of onion and 9 kg of tomatoes. Now, first of all, if we compare that the total usage in the standard is 10 kg, but in actual, the total usage is 15 kg. So there is a difference between the total. And this is known as yield variance. This is known as yield variance. If you can also observe that we have also changed the proportion. So the onion is 5 by 10 because we are using 5 kg out of the total of 10 kg. So it will be 5 divided by 10. It will be 0.5, that is 50%. That means in my standard proportion, we have used 50% onion and 50% tomatoes. In actual, we have used 6 kg of onion out of the total usage of 15 kg. That means we have used 40% onions and 60% tomatoes. So if you can observe that there is a change of proportion as well. And due to this change of proportion, there should be a variance which is known as mix variance. So the mix variance is due to the change in proportion, whereas the yield variance is due to the total yield for the units. Okay? Now let's calculate this in the example. So for this, let's open an Excel sheet. So first of all, what I'm doing is, I will write the heading. So first heading, sorry, I should write that I'm calculating the mix variance. And my first heading will be proportion. Then material. In mix variance, the first heading will be actual quantity into standard mix, then actual quantity used, the difference multiplied by standard price, and finally we have the variance. So this will be the complete heading. Now first of all, let's write the two different kinds of material, which were onions and tomatoes. And also let's see the proportion. So we require 5 kgs of onion out of the total of 10 kg. So the proportion will be 0.5. And this is same for tomatoes too. Now I will write the values in the actual quantity used. And the actual quantity used is 600 kg of onions and 900 kgs of tomatoes. It will be 600 kgs of onions and 900 kgs of tomatoes. And then I will total it. So the total usage is 1500 kg. Now what I do, I will multiply the total usage with its proportion. And this will be known as actual quantity into standard mix. Actual quantity into standard mix. Yes, it will be 750. So equal 1500 multiplied by 0.5, it is 750. Same is for onions. I will now identify the difference. So the difference will be 750 minus 600, it will be 150. And if I do the same calculation, I will copy and then paste it, it will be minus 50. Now what I do, I will multiply by its standard price, which is $2 per kg for onion and $4 per kg for tomatoes. So $2 for onions and $4 for tomatoes. Hence the variance will be difference multiplied by the standard price. Copy and then paste it. My final variance will be its total, which is 300. Now because the answer is in negative, so this will be adverse variance. So that is how I will calculate the mixed variance. Have you understood that? Abid Shahid asked me why we are not using 10 and 20 prices. Dear, 10 is not the price. This is not the price. This is the standard material cost per unit. The standard price is $2. The standard price for tomato is $4 per kg. So this 10 or 20 is not the price. If I can go back on the explanation of standard, I did explain that. Let me go back over there. Over here. So this was the standard price. This was standard material cost. Okay? Now, let's also discuss yield variance. Now, let's learn some key techniques so that we can speed it up. So what I will do, I will simply copy and paste it. Now, when I copy and paste it, you will see the only difference in the yield variance is that this column, actual quantity into standard mix, is replaced by the actual quantity used. And instead of that, we require over here actual output into standard usage. Okay? Now, I can refer the name of the materials. So, this will be the name of the materials. I can also refer the actual quantity into standard mix. So this will be equal 750 and I can now only fill the actual output into standard usage. So in actual, we have produced 100 units and the standard usage was 5. So this will be 500. This will be same for tomatoes. Now, as far as difference portion is concerned, what I will be doing is, because my further formulas are almost similar, so what I will do, I will simply copy and paste it. Control C for copy and Control V for paste. So my variance will be how much? It is 1500. And once again, because it is in minus, so it will be adverse. Motar Siddiqui has asked me where this 0.5 comes from. Dear, this 0.5 is the standard proportion. Okay? Okay? So the standard proportion of onion was 5 kg and the total standard was of 10 kg. So this is 5 by 10. The other question from Umar Yasin, and it is, so please, why is that when the budgeted is higher, then we say it is favorable yield, but in sale it is different? Dear, the point is very simple. The point is very simple because it is a cost. Now, in case of cost, if I am writing it over here, or rather I should write it on my OneNote document. So this is that you should remember always that if budgeted cost is greater than the actual cost, then it is a favorable situation. Then it is a favorable situation because you have spent less what you were expecting. So spending less is the favorable situation for the company. But when it comes to the sales, then if budgeted sales are greater than the actual sales, this will be adverse. Now, once again, this is because if my actual sales are less than the budget, then it means I have lesser revenues than I was expecting. So I have less income. That means this is an adverse situation. Let's go back to the Excel. And there's one more question, and that explain the actual output. Okay. Dear, the formula for actual output into standard usage is very simple. We will simply multiply by the actual number of units with the standard usage. And if we can see the example, sorry, this is the example of sales. If we can see the example, this is my actual output, the actual batches that I have produced, and this was 100. Okay, so it was provided in the exam. Now, Similarly, the same situation can come up in sales volume. So even the sales volume can split into further two advanced variants. One is known as mix variance and the other is known as quantity variance. So in material usage, we call it yield, but in sales volume, we call it quantity. Mustaf Shabir has asked me, how would you comment if the examiner asked you to assess the performance of the manager? Mustaf, please wait for a while. This is a pure section of performance assessment. So I will let you know how to assess the performance, because there should be some reason in this scenario. So you have to wait for that how you should assess the performance. The performance of the variance and also the performance in the last section should be the same answers. The approach at least should be the same. So I will be discussing I will have specific points on how to assess a performance. Okay? So we will be discussing that. Calculating the variance is just the half of the question. Many times there are half marks for the calculation of variances and half mark is for the assessment of its performance. So I will discuss that how you should going to assess the performance, but you have to wait for that. Okay? So these are the table. Now, as the slides are already provided to you, so I'm directly jumping into the example. And this is the example. Please read the example so that we can perform it in spreadsheet form. Now, let's discuss this example. So once again, first what we do, we will prepare the table for that. So my first heading is sales mix. And for that, I will be making proportion, then the name of the products. So we have one portion of actual units into standard mix. Then we have actual units sold. Then the difference multiplied by the standard profit. and finally the variance. Let's make it bold. So first of all, remember that this time we will be making the proportion based on the budgeted data. And in the budgeted data, it is 400 and 300. So the total will be 700. That means the chocolate crunch will be 400 by 700. So it will be equal 400 by 700. This is chocolate. And the other product is strawberry. And this will be equal 300 by 700. This will be my standard proportion. The actual units sold provided in the question is 280 units of chocolate and 630 units of strawberry. So it will be 280 and 630. And what I will do, I will make the total. Now the calculation of the actual units into standard mix will be the same. The total units multiply by the standard proportion. Once again, the total actual units multiply by the standard proportion. So this time the difference will be equal actual units minus standards. So this is 240 adverse variance in case of chocolate, but 240 favorable variance in case of strawberry. Now we will be multiplying by its standard profit, which is 5 for chocolate and 3 for strawberry. So it will be 5 and 3. So the variance will be this will be the variance. So when I total it, I will have minus 480 value. That means an adverse variance. So sales mix has an adverse variance of 480. Yes, thank you, Abhay. You are correct. Umar Yasin has asked the question, so please, where are you going to use profit per unit or contribution per unit in multiplying by the difference? Here it is simple. If the examiner has told you that the company uses marginal costing, you will use contribution per unit. But if it says that the company uses absorption costing, you will use profit per unit. The other way to look at that is that in the question, if you have provided with the standard contribution per unit and not the profit per unit, then of course you will be using the contribution per unit, the given one. Okay? So this will be told by the examiner. Now let's calculate sales quantity variance. And once again, I will simply copy and paste it, my headings. The difference will be that now my actual units into standard mix will be shift against the actual units sold, and this will be replaced by budgeted units. The two products are chocolate and strawberry. Let's refer it. It will be chocolate and strawberry. Copy and paste it. It will adjust itself. The actual unit into standard mix once again will be the same one. So I'm just referring. As far as budgeted units are concerned, this should be given in the question, and that was, it was 400 and 300. oops, 400 and 300. Now for the remaining part, yes, Abid, thank you, you are correct. For the remaining part, what you will be doing is simply copy and paste it, and you will have the answer of sales quantity variance, which is favorable. Umar, the reason for Umar has asked me, please explain the mix and yields in sales variance. Umar, the reason is the same that we had discussed in the material. There is no difference in the logic. The only difference is that it was on material, but this time it was on sales. We have two different products. Okay? So there is not much difference between the explanation of material mix and sales mix. Abid, this is the method to calculate, to do it for the sales quantity variance. I know this method, but if you are convenient in spreadsheet, then you see that once you have done your mix variance, majority of the time you have to copy and paste it. So you don't need to do that. This is just my way of doing things. Okay? Yes, Umar, you can prepare the same format in the paper base, but of course you don't have the option to copy and paste it. So you have to do all your calculations manually. Okay? As far as knowledge proportion is concerned, the calculation aspect is concerned, there is no difference between the paper-based exam or the CB exam. It is the process way. The way to solve the question is different. Okay? Now let's discuss planning and operational variance. So what happens is that we make a standard from the standard cost card known as original budgets or original standard. Then we have a revised standard, and we also have an actual performance. Now, there is a difference between the standard and actual, and this is known as the variance that we generally calculate. This is the variance that we generally calculate. But if we take a difference between standard and revised standard, this will be known as planning variance. And if we calculate the variance between revised standard and actual, this will be known as operational variance. Okay, have you understood that? Why we do that? This is because planning variance is generally deemed to be uncontrollable, whereas operational variance is deemed to be controllable. Sorry, I was just a bit away for a while, so I had to switch off my camera and mic. So I apologize for that. Umar has asked me, controllable by the management or who? Dear, controllable by those who are responsible for that. For example, if it is a price variance, then it is the purchase manager who is responsible for the price variance. Okay? So controllable means that whether the variance is in control of purchase manager or not. The reason for the controllable and uncontrollable I will be discussing when I will discuss the aspects of performance measurement. Okay? So now how to formulate the planning and control variance. So for planning variance, what you have to do is you have to replace actual with revised standard. You have to replace actual with revised standard. And for operational, you will replace standard with revised standard. Let's see an example of material usage planning and operational. So this is the formula to calculate the material usage variance. Actual output into standard usage minus total actual usage multiplied by standard purchase price. Now, first of all, try to break the formula. The reason for the breakage is that the total actual usage has two components. One is the actual output and the other one is actual usage per unit. Now, if we want to calculate the planning variance, what we should do? We should replace the actual with revised standard. That means in usage variance, wherever there is actual usage per unit, I will replace it with revised standard. So in the formula, if I have to calculate the planning variance, this actual usage per unit will be replaced by revised standard usage. So this is how it's done. The remaining formula will be the same simple formula. The only thing that you need to learn is that in planning variance, you will be replacing actual with revised standard. And for operational, you will be replacing standard with revised standard. So this will be the formula. You can see standard with revised standard. All the other performance is same. So let's finally have an example of planning and operational variance. So we have to calculate the labor, planning and operational variance in as much detail as possible. So please read the example and then we will discuss that. I usually switch off my mic and camera when I ask you to read the example. This is because so that you can concentrate on reading the example. So I hope you have read the information. So I will be once again doing this question in the spreadsheet format. And please note that how I prepare the data for that in this situation especially. Okay. So what I will do in this situation, I will first write all the information that is required. So I will be requiring actual output. Then there is standard R. There should also be revised standard R and actual R per unit. We will also be requiring standard rate, the revised standard rate, and the actual rate. Because in this question, both standard rate and the standard R has been changed. Okay. Now let's put the values in that. Now the actual output is 15,000. So let's write 15,000. 15,000. Then the standard R. And the standard R is 0.5. This is the original standard. 0.5. It has said that because of the new quality control, we have to add 20% to this standard to build up the revised standard. So it will be how much? It will be standard R into 120%. So the revised standard R is 0.6. Now let's calculate the actual R's per unit. So this will be in actual, sorry, this was the budgeted production. I put it wrong. The actual production was 14,000. Okay, so let's replace that. It will be 14,000. Now the actual R's per unit will be 8,700 divided by 14,000. So it's equal 8,700 divided by 14,000. Dear, the planning variance is actually the difference between the standard and revised standard. Correct. Agreed. Correct. Let me think. Let me see it again. Maybe I actually was wrong, but let me take it again. Where it is. The slides of my variance has just lost. Here it is. No, I have done it correctly. So if I replace actual with revised standard, that's what I have done in planning variance. Had I? Now with that, you have seen that my difference will be between standard usage and revised standard usage. So this is the planning variance, not the operational one. Okay. Okay. That means if I replace actual with revised standard, that will mean that from my formula, actual will be eliminated. Yes, I'm talking about the top line. Replace actual with revised standard. What will happen with that is that your actual, because actual will be replaced with revised standard, I'm not saying that compare actual with revised standard. I'm saying it is written replace actual with the revised standard, and when I replace it, from my formula, actual will be eliminated and will be replaced by the word revised standard. So now my variance formula will then be revised standard versus the original standard. So this will be the planning variance and not the operational variance. Okay, have you understood, Shagar? Now, let's talk about the standard rate. So we have been provided that $8 is per unit. So this is not the standard rate, this is the standard labor cost per unit. Now remember that the standard cost per unit will be 0.5, which is the standard R, multiplied by the rate, and this answer is $8. So if we divide it by 0.5, I will have the standard rate of 16. Okay? So the standard rate will be equal 8 divided by 0.5. Now the revised standard rate is provided in the question, and that is $15. It is given in the question. And the actual rate will be the actual cost divided by the actual hour. So it will be 130500 equal 130500 divided by 8700. So this is also 50. So what I have done over here is I have, first of all, write all the required information in that. Now let's calculate the labor rate planning variance first. So if you rebuild your formula, the labor rate planning variance will be equal standard rate minus revised standard rate multiplied by the actual hours. And actual hours will be actual hour per unit multiplied by number of units. So this will be 8700. Now, as the answer is positive, it will be favorable. Let's open it this one. Once again, it is standard rate minus revised standard rate. So instead of actual rate, I have replaced it with revised standard rate multiplied by the actual hours, and the formula for actual hour will be actual hours per unit multiplied by number of units. Now let's talk about labor operational variance. I should write labor rate operational variance. And this will be revised standard rate minus actual rate multiplied by actual hour per unit into number of units. So this will be 0. This is because revised standard rate and actual rate is same. So this will be 0. So neither it is a favorable variance nor it is an adverse variance. Similarly, we can calculate the labor efficiency planning variance in that. And this can be done by actual output into standard R minus actual output into, sorry, I've put it wrong. It is actual output into standard R minus actual output into revised standard R. And then I will multiply it with the standard rate, which is 60. So it will be 22,400 minus, so it will be adverse. Yes, sure, Muhtar. I will show you the question. Here it is. Be it a bit more quickly, because I've already consumed 6-7 minutes up. Is it okay? Now let's see the labor efficiency operational variance. So this will be actual output into revised standard hours minus actual output into actual hours per unit. Multiply by the standard rate. So this will be 4,800 adverse. So this is how you can calculate the labor rate planning and operational variance, and also the labor efficiency planning and operational variance. Well, we can ignore that even in the formula, but I don't do that because this is a very helpful guideline for me. I can simply calculate the variances, and whenever there is a negative sign, I calculate in such a way that negative sign will automatically tell me that this is an adverse variance. So it is very easy for me to write it. This is the reason. But as if I could understand that you are doing it in manual, so don't write the negative sign when you are doing on the paper based. Okay? So this is it for the day. Thank you very much. There is a question from Sarah Ibrahim. Why did you use 16 instead of 15 in the labor efficiency rate? Dear, the reason for this is the standard rate is 16. The standard rate is, where is the question? Over here. The standard rate is 16. And remember that because it is an efficiency variance, so we will be changing labor hours and not the rate. Whatever we have to make a change, we will only be changing the hours. So we will be replacing revised standard hours with the standard hours, or actual hours with the revised standard hours, and we will not change the rate in efficiency variance. This is the same that in rate variance, we will not change the hours. Okay? So thank you very much for the day. So tomorrow we will be discussing the performance management, and first of all we will be looking at that how should we assess the performance in the context of variances and then in the context of organization as well as division. Okay, so I will just telling you the tips and you will do it inshallah. So thank you very much for the day and Allah Hafiz.